As a wealthy billionaire, Alexander lacked nothing: money, power, fame. Yet despite having it all, he felt an emptiness deep inside, a loneliness that nothing seemed to fill. That was until one rainy night, when he accidentally passed by a rundown corner of the street. In the dim light, a homeless boy sat huddled under a porch, his bright blue eyes no longer shining with hope but filled only with cold despair. Alexander stopped. He couldn't understand why he turned back, but there was something in the boy's eyes that made it impossible for him to walk away. The boy looked up, and a single word escaped his lips: "Dad." This word didn't just make Alexander's heart break, it was a shock. A cry from the depths of the boy's soul, a cry that Alexander couldn't ignore. It wasn't a cry because the boy knew who he was, but because of the deep, desperate longing of a child who had never known love. And from that moment, their lives would never be the same again. That night, New York City glowed under the neon lights, but if anyone cared to look, they would see the corners that light couldn't reach. Alexander, the wealthy man, drove through the crowded streets of Manhattan. He lived in a lavish mansion, owning everything that most people dream of, yet inside, he felt a gnawing emptiness. Despite his great success, he never felt truly happy. On that pouring rainy night, as the streetlights cast faint shadows on the puddles, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He had achieved everything, but was that really all he needed? As his car passed an intersection, his eyes accidentally caught a strange sight. Beneath the old porch of a small house, a boy sat huddled, hugging his thin legs. The boy wore only a thin shirt, drenched by the relentless rain. Alexander frowned, feeling something stir within him. It wasn't the first time he'd seen homeless people on the streets, but this time something was different. The boy wasn't just a passing figure, he was a living being, full of untold stories. Alexander stopped his car, feeling a strong urge to do something. He stepped out into the cold rain, unaffected by the chill. In that moment, a thought flashed through his mind: can I help this boy? He didn't know the answer, but his heart told him that this was the moment that would change his life. Liam, the boy Alexander had just discovered, was the complete opposite of the city's prosperity. Under the faint light of the street lamps, his eyes shimmered with a deep sadness. Unlike other children, he didn't have the bright, hopeful gaze. Instead, his eyes were filled with skepticism, full of hurt. It seemed as though the boy had grown accustomed to fighting alone in a world filled with coldness. Though the rain continued to fall, Liam's eyes didn't blink. They stared straight ahead, as if waiting for something he wasn't sure would come. The boy no longer believed in miracles or kind-hearted strangers. With each passing day, Liam's trust in people and in life slowly faded. He wore only a thin, faded, and worn-out shirt, yet there was no fear or worry in his eyes. Perhaps, in this dark world, the boy had learned to live with loneliness and scarcity. But in that moment, when Alexander looked into Liam's sorrowful eyes, he couldn't help but feel a sense of understanding. Liam wasn't just a homeless boy. He was a soul fighting against all the hardships life had thrown at him. Alexander could see the pain in his eyes, and he knew that this boy's life didn't have to be this way. He could help, but he didn't know where to start. However, when he looked at Liam, Alexander understood that sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to open their heart, and everything could change. Liam still held the sign in his hands, and it seemed to be a desperate cry from the depths of his soul. Need a family, 3 short words, but they contained everything Liam longed for. A family, a home, a place where he could feel safe, where he didn't have to live in loneliness and fear. For a child, a family could mean everything. But Liam had gone so long without a real family. He no longer hoped for promises from strangers, but the sign he held had a deeper meaning. He didn't just want a place to stay or a meal to eat, he wanted someone to call Dad, someone to trust, someone who would stay with him no matter what. When Alexander saw the sign, his heart tightened. The words "need a family" weren't just the plea of a child. They were a cry from deep within, a silent reminder that every person deserves a family, a place to belong. Alexander couldn't ignore those eyes. The eyes of a boy who had lost faith in this world but still yearned for something simple, a family. As a billionaire, Alexander had everything people could wish for, but in that moment, he realized that material things could never fill the void in his heart. Liam, with his simple sign and longing eyes, was teaching him the true value of life. Alexander couldn't have imagined that his first meeting with Liam would happen in such an unexpected way. The boy, with tear-filled eyes, couldn't control his emotions, and suddenly whispered the word "Dad." It was a word he had never truly understood, but in that moment, it became an unconscious cry, a deep wish of his heart. Dad. The word came out naturally. As if it were the only word Liam could say at that moment, a word he had longed for from the bottom of his heart. And for Alexander, that call wasn't just the innocence or unconsciousness of a child, it was a wave crashing into his heart. His emotions surged, and Alexander couldn't help but be amazed, moved by the depth of what he had just heard. The boy called him Dad without knowing that those words awakened a part of his heart that had long been dormant. Alexander, though a powerful and wealthy man, felt as though he had never truly experienced this deep love. The boy didn't call him Dad just because he wanted a family, but because, in that moment, he believed Alexander was the one who could give him that. And from that moment, an invisible bond formed between two people, one who had once had everything and one who had nothing but a worn-out sign and a fierce longing. Liam's words had touched Alexander's heart deeply. But he didn't want the boy to feel that he had to call him Dad to receive help. He bent down, looked Liam in the eyes, and spoke gently but sincerely, "You don't have to call me Dad, but I will help you." Alexander didn't say this out of duty but because he truly felt the need to do something for Liam. He understood that those words wouldn't change everything. But they could make the boy feel like he wasn't alone anymore. They could be the beginning of a journey that both of them needed to walk. With one simple but powerful decision, both Alexander and Liam's lives changed forever. Alexander decided not just to help the boy once, but to give him a real chance to change his life. He took Liam home, a place where the boy would no longer have to worry about the cold nights. But more importantly, Liam would never have to suffer loneliness again. Alexander had brought Liam into a new world, a place where the boy would no longer have to long for love and care. And on that journey, Alexander would also rediscover the true values of life that he had long forgotten during his years of chasing wealth and fame. As soon as Liam stepped into Alexander's house, he was almost overwhelmed. He had never seen a place so clean and warm. The soft light blue walls, the neatly hung family pictures, and the smell of toasted bread filled the air. Liam froze at the doorway, his heart pounding, his legs wanting to run but his body frozen in place. Alexander stepped forward, gently placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, and smiled warmly, "Welcome home, son." Liam had never heard anyone say that to him before. In the orphanage, he was just a name on a list. But here, with just a glance and Alexander's voice, Liam felt like he mattered. Even so, he was still cautious, glancing around furtively, afraid like a little bird just released from a cage. As Alexander showed Liam around the house, the boy remained silent, not daring to speak, clutching his sleeve tightly. That night, when Alexander handed him a cup of warm milk, Liam hesitated for a long time before accepting it. And that night, for the first time in years, he didn't have to huddle on a cold iron bed. In the gentle arms of the stranger who was full of patience, Liam began to feel the start of something new. The next morning, the smell of pancakes from the kitchen woke Liam up. He rubbed his eyes and looked around the new room, the bed with ocean blue sheets, a teddy bear placed in a corner, and the sunlight streaming through the window. He still thought he was dreaming. When he went downstairs to the kitchen, he saw Alexander baking, smiling brightly. "Do you like strawberries or chocolate?" Liam didn't know how to answer because, for years, he had only eaten simple meals, sometimes sharing them with other children. That breakfast was the first full meal Liam could remember having in his life. The soft, fluffy pancakes melted in his mouth with a sweet aroma. The boy ate slowly, his eyes constantly looking at Alexander, as if trying to confirm that this was real. After the meal, Alexander took him on a tour of the house, showing him every little corner, the library, the small garden behind the house, the wooden swing hanging under the big tree. Liam trembled as he touched everything, feeling overwhelmed and unfamiliar. That night, lying in the warm bed and hearing the soft breeze outside the window, Liam no longer had to force himself to close his eyes in fear. He fell asleep with a strange feeling, safety. In the first few nights, Liam would often wake up suddenly, afraid that someone would shout at him, kick him outside, or make him do something. But every time he opened his eyes, he saw only the gentle light of the night lamp and the soft footsteps of Alexander checking to see if he was asleep. One night, when he had a nightmare, Alexander sat by the bed, placed his hand on Liam's head, and whispered, "It's okay, I'm here." Those words were like magic, soothing the little heart that had been worn out from years of fear. In the following days, Liam began to realize that he didn't need to worry every second. No one was fighting for his food. No one was pushing him out into the cold. No one was yelling at him for dropping something. He began to feel his heart soften, like a stream of water flowing gently. While sitting by the window to study, Liam would look up at Alexander, working quietly in the living room, and smile. That night, for the first time, Liam pulled the blanket over himself, sighed in relief, and fell asleep without any worries. Alexander didn't just give Liam a home. He spent time every day sitting with him, telling stories about life, about how everyone has their own value. He taught Liam to look in the mirror, smile at himself, and say, "You deserve to be loved." At first, Liam didn't believe it. He thought he was just an abandoned child, someone no one needed. But Alexander patiently, step by step, helped him learn to believe in himself. Once, when Liam was too scared to go out to the playground because he feared being laughed at, Alexander took his hand and walked out with him, saying, "No matter what anyone says, you are still you, and you are wonderful." Those words, though simple, were an entirely new world to Liam. He began to practice drawing, writing, and expressing his thoughts. Alexander always praised him, even for the smallest things. Gradually, Liam learned that he wasn't an invisible shadow. He had value, dreams, and the right to be happy. Even though everything was wonderful, Liam couldn't open up immediately. He had been hurt too many times. Once, when Alexander gave him a new jacket, Liam looked at him with suspicion. "Why are you so nice to me? I haven't done anything to deserve this." Alexander just smiled, ruffled his hair, and said, "You don't need to do anything. I love you because you are you." But those words confused Liam. He secretly hid the jacket, fearing that if he wore it, it might be taken away the next day. That night, Liam cried quietly, not understanding why his heart was full of worry, even though no one was hurting him anymore. In the days that followed, he still hesitated to accept help, afraid that he would owe something, afraid of being abandoned again. Alexander didn't get angry. He just quietly stayed by his side, patiently waiting for Liam to open up. And it was that patience that slowly broke down the cold wall inside the little boy. One day, when Liam accidentally broke a glass, he panicked, trembling, his eyes welling up with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll clean it up, I didn't mean to." Alexander ran over, not yelling, not angry. He just bent down, picked up the broken pieces, and gently said, "It's okay, son. Everyone makes mistakes. I'm just worried you might cut yourself." Liam stood still. That was the first time he understood that he didn't have to be perfect to be loved. From that day on, Liam became braver each day. He dared to laugh, dared to share, dared to say, "I like this," or "I don't like that." Alexander always listened, never forced him. One evening, Liam hugged Alexander and whispered, "I never thought anyone would love me like this." Alexander held him tightly and softly said, "Because you deserve it, son." And in that moment, Liam understood that true love didn't require conditions. It just needed a heart big enough and someone patient enough to love. In the early days, Liam was still a quiet shadow in the vast house. He moved quietly, always hiding in the corners, as if afraid to disturb or be reprimanded. Alexander never forced him, only gently present, allowing the boy to know that here, no one wanted to push him away. Little by little, Liam began to change. One morning, while Alexander was sitting in the living room reading the newspaper, the boy cautiously approached and asked in a whisper, "Uncle Alexander, can I sit next to you?" Alexander smiled, folded the newspaper, and patted the seat beside him. From that moment on, Liam began to grow less timid. Once, Alexander invited friends over for dinner. At first, Liam hid behind the door. But then, curious, he peeked out, his eyes sparkling. Alexander waved him over, and instead of refusing, Liam quietly walked over, sat at the table, and listened to the conversation. When someone asked him something, he answered softly, shyly, but his face shone with joy. Alexander realized that all it took was a nod of encouragement, a supportive glance, and Liam would become more confident. The boys started joining family activities, watching movies with Alexander, taking walks outside, and even helping to clean up after dinner. The biggest change was in Liam's eyes. He no longer looked down when speaking, no longer avoided the gaze of others. Instead, his eyes began to light up, filled with curiosity and a thirst for learning and connecting. Alexander noticed the boy laughing more, laughing while reading books, laughing while playing with the dog, and laughing while listening to Alexander's funny childhood stories. These weren't just small changes, they were the opening of an entire new world in the heart of a once-abandoned child. One Sunday morning, Alexander woke up to the sound of rustling from the kitchen. He quietly went downstairs to find Liam trying to reach a cereal box on the high shelf, struggling to pour milk into a bowl. When he saw Alexander, the boy blushed. "I wanted to make breakfast for you." Alexander chuckled, his heart warmed. He went over and helped the boy arrange the breakfast neatly, and then they both sat down to eat, chatting happily. Not long after, Liam began to take more initiative with the small tasks around the house. He learned how to water the plants, wipe the tables, and even volunteered to take out the trash. Alexander never asked, but always thanked him whenever he helped, and Liam's eyes sparkled with pride. One time, when Alexander was fiddling with a leaky faucet, Liam ran over with a flashlight to help him, his eyes shining as if participating in an important mission. Alexander gently patted his head and smiled. "You're the best assistant I've ever had." In the evenings, after cleaning up the kitchen, Liam would sit next to Alexander, reading books. He was no longer a detached child, but had become part of the family, an indispensable part. Alexander realized that it was these simple moments he had been searching for all along. A home not just filled with laughter, but with love, where everyone had a role, no matter how small. Once, Alexander asked Liam, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" At first, Liam shrugged, his eyes darkening. But a few weeks later, the boy came to Alexander, whispering, "I've thought about it. I want to be a teacher." Alexander was surprised. "Why is that?" Liam shyly smiled. "Because I want to help other children, just like you helped me." Hearing that, Alexander hugged the boy tightly, his eyes filling with tears. That was the first time he saw Liam truly believe in a better tomorrow. Before, Liam always thought he didn't deserve to have dreams. But now, he started drawing pictures of classrooms, writing in his journal about the things he wanted to learn, and even researching online about how to become a teacher. Alexander watched every step quietly, never intervening, just supporting him silently. He let Liam choose his own books, decide on extra lessons, because he knew that the most important thing wasn't the grades, but that the boy believed in himself. One evening, Liam sat on the balcony, gazing at the stars, whispering, "I think I deserve to be happy too, right, Uncle?" Alexander came over, hugged him. "Not only do you deserve it, but you deserve it more than anyone." And for the first time, Liam believed it was true. Alexander once thought he had everything: money, power, fame. But then, on late nights when he returned to the vast house, greeted only by the cold echoes, he realized he had no one to share his joy or sorrow with. The arrival of Liam changed everything. Suddenly, dinner no longer felt silent, mornings no longer felt lonely. He began to realize that happiness wasn't the number in his bank account, but the glowing eyes of a boy listening to him tell stories, the laughter ringing through the kitchen. One night, while watching Liam sleep soundly, Alexander sat beside the bed, quietly holding the boy's hand. He realized that all these years, he had been chasing after trivial things, neglecting the simplest thing, a family. After long, tiring days at work, just seeing Liam run to greet him, hugging him tightly, made all the stress vanish. Expensive gifts, luxurious vacations had never given him the sense of fulfillment that hearing Liam whisper, "I love you, Uncle Alexander," did. Alexander knew he couldn't turn back time, but he could start over, with Liam. The boy didn't just save the heart of a lonely billionaire, he taught him the most valuable lesson: love is the only thing that makes life meaningful. One afternoon, while Alexander was busy handling work, Liam burst into the room, holding up a drawing. The boy chattered excitedly, "Dad, look at the picture I drew." Alexander froze. Dad, this was the second time the boy had called him that, but this time, it wasn't out of politeness, it wasn't because someone told him to, it was because the boy truly considered him his father. Alexander sat down, opened his arms and hugged Liam. "What did you call me?" he asked softly, his voice trembling. Liam looked up, his eyes shining. "You're my dad, right?" Alexander tightened his embrace, tears rolling down his cheeks. For years, he had everything, but only now, he realized how truly wealthy he was. From that day on, Liam no longer hesitated to introduce Alexander to his friends. "This is my dad." He proudly showed off pictures of them together, proudly flaunted the little gifts Alexander had given, and proudly shared the times his dad took him to the park. And every time Alexander heard the word "Dad," his heart would skip a beat with joy. It was a recognition, a sacred bond, not based on paperwork or blood ties, but simply on love. That day, Alexander and Liam sat together on a park bench, watching the people pass by. Liam leaned his head on Alexander's shoulder and quietly asked, "Are you tired, Dad?" Alexander smiled and patted the boy's head. "When you're beside me, I never feel tired." They sat there, quietly, but their hearts were full of peace. Alexander was no longer a billionaire only concerned with tense meetings and billion-dollar contracts. He had learned to make time for Liam, to study with him, play games, and share simple moments. In return, Liam was no longer the shy, fearful homeless boy. He had become a companion, bringing Alexander simple joys, the laughter of a child, and unexpected hugs that made all worries disappear. They were not just father and son on paper, they were a real family. They leaned on each other, healed each other's old wounds. Alexander found the meaning of life not through wealth, but through the gaze, the smile of the boy beside him. Liam found a home not in the luxurious four walls, but in the wide embrace that was always ready to protect him. In this vast world, a billionaire and a homeless child had found each other, not by chance, but by fate. And they knew that from now on, no matter what life brought, they would always walk together. Although Liam had found a new home, the memories of his time on the street didn't easily fade away. Every night, sometimes, the nightmares would return, the noise of the streets, the bone-chilling cold, and the overwhelming loneliness of having no one to turn to. One evening, when these memories surged back with full force, Liam sat lost in thought in his room, his eyes staring blankly into space. Alexander noticed this and, without asking too many questions, quietly sat beside him, pulling Liam into a gentle embrace. "You're not alone anymore," Alexander whispered. "Every day, we'll keep moving forward together." Liam didn't say anything, but he could feel the comfort in the warmth of his father's arms. For the first time, he felt peaceful. Alexander knew that, even though Liam now had a home, his past was still an indelible part of him. But he promised never to let Liam face that pain alone. Day by day, with Alexander's patience and unconditional love, the painful memories began to fade, replaced by hope and affection. Liam started to face his past without letting it define his future. Though his steps were small, he could feel himself growing stronger, no longer alone. When Liam started school, it wasn't easy. He felt out of place in the crowd. The other kids didn't understand why he didn't know how to dress right, why he seemed shy when talking, and sometimes, they mocked him. Liam felt ashamed of his past, of things the other kids couldn't understand. Every evening when he came home, he poured out his sadness to Alexander. He would tell him he didn't want to go to school anymore, that no one liked him. Alexander would listen and hug him tightly. "Your worth isn't defined by what others think, Liam. You are not what they say about you. You are yourself, and that's the only thing that matters." These words were like a balm to Liam. Gradually, he began to realize that the mocking could never take away his goodness. Alexander always encouraged Liam to keep trying, motivating him whenever he felt tired. Over time, Liam learned to stand firm in the face of gossip, knowing that those who truly cared would love him for who he was, not for his appearance or past. These small lessons helped Liam grow into a stronger boy, no longer easily swayed by others' judgments. Even though there were tough times, Liam never gave up. One day, when the class organized a group activity, Liam, though initially very hesitant, decided to participate. He chose a topic he loved, a passion that only he had ever understood, drawing. He didn't expect that, when sharing his passion, the other kids would show such interest and start asking about his artwork. The surprised looks and questions about his drawings made Liam feel special. One girl, named Sarah, praised his paintings, and from that moment, the two began to talk more. Liam felt something change inside, a joy he had never felt before. Not everyone avoided him, and not all the people around him saw his past. Thanks to Alexander's encouragement, Liam gradually opened up to new friends. He learned to express himself. No longer afraid of being judged or ridiculed. New friendships began to form, and each school day became more eagerly awaited. What he never expected was that these new friends didn't just look at him with pity, they truly liked and respected him for who he was. Throughout his journey, Liam faced many challenges, but nothing made him hesitate. One afternoon, when Liam tripped in class and was mocked by his classmates, he felt embarrassed and wanted to give up. But when he came home, Alexander not only comforted him but also taught him an important lesson. Do you know, strength is not about always standing tall, but knowing how to get back up every time you fall. What matters is that you never give up, no matter how many times you stumble. Liam didn't fully understand then, but after a few times of standing up again after falling, he began to realize the value of this lesson. He no longer feared failure. Each fall was an opportunity to rise stronger, and he knew that with Alexander by his side, he would never be alone in his struggles. Liam and Alexander's relationship wasn't always smooth. Some people, especially in the community, didn't understand the bond between a billionaire and a homeless boy. They criticized, mocked, and sometimes distanced themselves from them. But each time this happened, Alexander and Liam became even closer. When the criticism from outsiders came, they didn't show any weakness but simply looked at each other and kept moving forward. One day, when Liam was teased by a group of classmates about their special relationship, he felt very sad. But Alexander came over, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "We don't need to explain to anyone about the love we have for each other. What matters is that we know we have each other." And that was the encouragement, the source of strength, that helped Liam continue to face every challenge with resilience, despite all the challenges they faced. The love between Alexander and Liam never faded. Together, they overcame every difficulty, the tears, the smiles, and the beautiful moments. And in the toughest times, their love was the motivation that kept them from ever giving up. One evening, as they sat together, Liam turned to Alexander and said, "Thank you for always being there, no matter how hard things get." Alexander smiled, hugged the boy, and said, "Because you're my family, and family is everything." Those simple yet loving words were the strength that helped them both overcome any obstacle. Nothing could ever tear them apart. Since meeting Alexander, Liam has changed a lot. He was no longer a lost child wandering aimlessly through life. One morning, while sitting in class, Liam watched his classmates working hard on their assignments and felt a newfound strength in his heart. He began to realize that learning was the key to unlocking a different future, one that he could decide and build for himself. Encouraged by Alexander, Liam decided to pursue education. He started to focus more on his studies, even though it was difficult at first. But he knew that he couldn't give up. "Every time you learn something new, you're building your future," Alexander told Liam. Those words echoed in his mind, and gradually, the difficulties became easier to overcome. Liam began to see his progress day by day, step by step, and he knew he was on the right path. The hardships of the past slowly faded away, replaced by belief in the future. Liam no longer lived aimlessly, but had a clear goal. And that was the first step on the path he would walk with Alexander. One day, while playing in the park, Liam noticed a group of homeless children begging on the streets. They had no home, no family, no place to turn to. Seeing that, Liam's heart was filled with emotion. "They're just like I was before," he told Alexander, "but now I don't know what I can do to help them." Alexander gently placed his hand on Liam's shoulder and said, "Helping others is one of the best ways for us to find meaning in life. Not all of us can change the whole world, but we can change the world for one person." From then on, the two of them began participating in charitable activities. They went to orphanages, helping children in difficult circumstances. Over time, Liam understood that giving was not just about material things. It was about love, care, and small actions that could make a huge difference in someone's life. He began to feel that his own life was more complete when he shared what he had with others. The joy of seeing the smiles of the children was something he could never buy with money. And that was the precious lesson Liam learned from Alexander's open heart. With everything he had gone through, Liam gradually became a more mature, stronger person. He not only learned how to face challenges but also how to love and share. The children he met through charity work were not just people to help but also people he wanted to befriend and walk alongside. The feeling of seeing other children receiving care, help, and love from both Alexander and himself had changed Liam greatly. He was no longer a lonely boy, no longer a child who only knew how to receive. Now, Liam knew how to give. He understood that, in fact, when you share and help others, you receive much more than what you give. Once, when he saw a classmate struggling with their studies, Liam took the initiative to help. He spent time explaining the lessons the classmate didn't understand. And when the classmate thanked him, Liam just smiled and said, "If one day I need help, I know you'll be the one to help me." That was the spirit Liam had learned from Alexander. Love and sharing are never in vain, and always carry deep meaning for both sides. Alexander was always busy with business, but when he saw the changes in Liam's life, he began to reconsider his own life goals. He realized that no matter how much money or fame one has, true happiness and meaning in life do not lie in those things. What mattered most were the actions he took, the ways he helped those around him. So, Alexander decided to dedicate more time to charity work. He started participating in community projects, helping homeless children, and building organizations for people in need. Every day spent working on those projects made him feel that his life truly had meaning. Alexander knew that what he did not only changed the lives of others but also changed him. One day, when he saw the smile of a child he had helped, Alexander felt an indescribable happiness. He realized that helping others was the best way to make life more worth living. And when doing this with Liam, he felt even more joyful. Life sometimes presents big decisions we must face. For Liam and Alexander, they made significant decisions together, but those decisions were not about money or fame. They decided to help others, spend time with family, and build a better community. Once, Alexander received an offer to collaborate with a large company with a huge income. But he wasn't interested. "I already have enough," he said. "What I need now are the true values in life. Money can't buy the moments of happiness spent with loved ones, and it can't bring me the peace I feel when helping others." And Liam, though still young, had learned this important lesson. The boy realized that big decisions in life are not easy choices. But if we live by the right values, no matter what decisions we make, we will never regret them. Looking ahead, both Liam and Alexander felt one thing very clearly: they were just beginning their journey. No matter how many challenges they would face, they knew that together, they could overcome anything. They had been through painful days and tough challenges, but now, they stood strong side by side, ready to step into the future. "I think I'll always have Alexander by my side," Liam said, gazing at the starry sky. Because only love can overcome everything. With hearts full of hope and belief in the future, they looked ahead to a bright future waiting for them. Both knew that nothing could ever separate them because love and belief in a better life were the greatest strength they had. And no matter how the world changed, they would always walk together on this path, forever. That day, when Liam stood before Alexander, a warm feeling spread within him. It had been a long time since he last felt lonely or lost, unlike the days when he first met Alexander. From the first day Alexander took him home, Liam's life had completely changed. He no longer just had a roof over his head, but he also had a father, someone who would always stand by him, no matter how tough life became. And today, standing in front of Alexander, Liam hesitated, but then he spoke, "Dad." It wasn't just a simple word. It was a declaration. A commitment that the love Alexander had for him, and the love he had for Alexander, would be eternal. No more words were needed. All they needed was a look, a hand held together, and a call from the heart. The word "Dad" wasn't just a label, it was a symbol of the love and sacrifice Alexander had given to Liam. And Liam had also realized that, despite not being bound by blood, the love between them was stronger than any other connection. They were family, and from that moment on, Liam was no longer just a child under protection, but the son of Alexander, forever. That day, Alexander and Liam sat side by side, looking out the window as the fiery sunset slowly disappeared over the horizon. They sat in silence for a while, no need to say anything. Just sitting together. They could feel everything. The journey they had gone through was long and filled with challenges, but every step, every hardship they overcame, made their love stronger than ever. From the very first days, when Liam wandered the streets with no one to care for him, until he found Alexander, a father by heart, not by blood, but ready to give his whole heart to love him. They had overcome so many storms. There were moments when they thought they couldn't go on anymore, but it was love, resilience, and faith in the future that helped them rise and move forward. They had passed through so many challenges together, from the struggles of fitting into society, to the times when Liam felt abandoned, to big decisions about life. But today, looking back, they saw how far they had come. They saw a bright future waiting for them, and more than that, they saw that life had become fuller and more complete than ever before. There are moments in life when we need nothing but peace. On one such evening, when the sun had set behind the mountains, Liam and Alexander sat together, wordlessly, but their hearts spoke everything. The bird songs echoed from afar, a gentle breeze passed by, and the world seemed to pause in perfect peace. Liam looked into Alexander's eyes. And he realized something simple but important: peace does not come from what's outside, but from within each person. This feeling, without anxiety, without fear, was something Liam had never felt before. And it was Alexander, with his unconditional love, who had given him that peace. Neither of them needed to speak. They only needed to know that, no matter how things changed, they would always have each other. Just by looking at one another, they understood that they had found peace within this relationship. And that was the most important thing in life. Life doesn't always need fancy words. Sometimes love is just in the small gestures, the understanding glances, and the silent moments. Liam and Alexander had learned this over time. Every time Alexander looked into Liam's eyes, he knew the love he had for him was unconditional. Every time Liam sat next to Alexander, he knew that the love he had for him was eternal. A simple handhold, a gentle hug, or a word of encouragement was enough. No need to say much because love sometimes doesn't need to be expressed in words. Those moments, though simple, were all they needed to feel the depth of their love. And from then on, they knew that this love didn't need to be searched for, it didn't need to be spoken out loud, because it existed in every small action they took. One evening, as Liam sat on the couch beside Alexander, he suddenly asked, "Dad, what do you think family is?" Alexander smiled gently and answered, "Family isn't always about those who share the same blood. Family is about those who find each other, who never give up, no matter the difficulties. And you, Liam, you are my family." Liam sat quietly, thinking about Alexander's words. It was true, family isn't always about blood ties. Family is about those who stand by each other, sharing joy and sorrow, accompanying one another through every challenge. And Liam realized that Alexander was his family, even though they didn't share the same bloodline. The love they had for each other was unbreakable. Looking at his life, Liam no longer felt lacking or lost. He realized that love knows no boundaries. It isn't dependent on race, gender, or bloodline. Love is simply a connection between hearts. And family is those whom we love and care for, no matter who we are. Both Liam and Alexander had found each other in this life, and they proved that true love has no borders. And they knew that, no matter how life changes, the love between them would last forever.